Okay, it is approaching 4:40, and we have a workshop here. The Employee Free Choice Act, and the people that will be speaking will be Fritz Flecky and Juanita Sanchez, and they will introduce themselves to this. This is a labor issue that's really important across the United States of America, especially here in Ohio, where unions are just completely disappearing. And they want to address the labor point of view regarding the Employee Free Choice Act. So enjoy. They're going to start their workshop right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Great.
It's like one of those houses.
So, among the few of us that are here, welcome. My name is Fritz Beckett. I'm with the Ohio Education Association. I'm going to take off this mic and move around a little bit. Boy, it's a hot one today, isn't it? Wonderful. To my right, Juanita Sanchez from the Service Employee International Union. And we're going to talk about the Employee Free Choice Act. Any of you know what that is? I know you guys don't. You're not even old enough to vote yet, but you could still call your congressman for us, right? The Employee Free Choice Act is a piece of legislation that's currently pending in Congress, and it is supported by the President and many senators, congressmen. It involves a number of things. I'm going to go through some slides real quick to introduce you to it. I'm sure Juanita has a lot more to say about it, and let's just go through. So, let's see, what is it? Okay, it's supported by a bipartisan coalition in Congress. The main thing is that it's going to enable working men and women to more easily form a labor union in their place of work, raising wages, raising conditions, working conditions, and restoring their freedom, really, because over the years, the workers have really lost their rights, against the corporations who are obviously anti-union. It does a number of things. It removes the current restrictions or obstacles to employees who want to collectively bargain with their employers. Now, anybody who works, well, first of all, do you know what collective bargaining is? It's a group of employees who work for an employer to bargain a contract with the employer that is binding, and that gives them some protections. Secondly, it guarantees that workers who want to form a union and want to collectively bargain are going to be able to, through a majority process, achieve a contract. And lastly, it allows employees to form unions through a majority sign-up through cards that accept or authorize union representation. So it's a democratic process. The most important thing I think that we all, kind of where everybody's at right now is that there's this huge recession going on. Our middle class is eroding. People are being foreclosed upon left and right. They're losing their jobs. And why? Because of greed, corporate greed. And what the EFCA does or helps to do is, give workers and employees, kind of back on an equal footing to turn around America's middle class. A couple of facts. Union members, 52% more likely to have job-provided health care. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've been following the health insurance debate in Congress. It's looking grim, to say the least. They talk about having a public option, and already our supposed friends, the Democrats, are backing off on it, and there's going to be, I suspect, some kind of compromise legislation that really kind of helps the health insurance companies as usual, and still will inhibit folks from having health insurance. Well, unions traditionally, that's part of the bargaining agreement is health insurance. So 52% more likely to have job provided health care, 3 times more likely to have a guaranteed pension. Back in the 80s, not even 25 years ago, most people had some kind of employer pension, employer-provided pension. That has rapidly eroded, and it was substituted by this thing they call the 401k. I call it like the 50k now, right? Because if you had money in a 401k that was worth something, it's certainly not worth much anymore. That was supposed to be your pension. And lastly, earn 28%, or union members earn 28% more on the average than non-union workers. And really that says something about the collective bargaining process. There's really only one way, and ComFest is a great example of this, is that there's only one way to put together folks in order to have some power. I mean, money has power. The only way to go against that is by forming a collective body, namely a union. So what is it? It's, I already showed this slide, didn't I? Okay, so am I going backwards or forwards? Okay, it gives workers the right to form a union. Americans want to join unions. Current polling shows that nearly 60 million people, 1/5 of this country would join a union today if they had the opportunity to do so. Now, I have a lot of friends that, actually most of my friends don't work, in a place that has a union anymore. Why is that? Because it's so hard to get one. Because if you talk about a union in a workplace, chances are pretty good that your manager or his manager or some other, person who is in management is going to say, oh, you don't need a union because we're all buddies here, we don't want this third party to get in the way. That's only going to mess up our relationship, but what's our relationship worth when I'm out the door the first chance you get and I have no protections at all. Employers actively prevent employees from forming a union. I mean, I read a book a number of years ago. I don't know if you read this, Juanita. It's called Confessions of a Union Buster. There are lawyers that are employed in this country today that specialize in going around and really fomenting, just this poisonous atmosphere against labor unions. The right, for example, I mean, how many times have you heard, oh, those union bosses, they're just interested in your dues. They just want, they're greedy, they're all corrupt, et cetera, et cetera. Well, let me tell you something. Here are two union bosses, right? I mean, we're just workers just like everybody else, and we're members as well of our own unions. Preaching lies is typical for the moneyed interests in this country. Too few workers are able to form unions and bargain because companies, they routinely block their efforts. I was talking about this book, Confessions of a Union Buster. He wrote this book kind of on his deathbed. He had cancer and he was dying, and he felt so bad about what he did for a living. Kind of like, I don't know if you ever heard of Lee Atwater, the former Republican tool that kind of made, he was Karl Rove before he was Karl Rove. Lee Atwater had a deathbed confession. He said, I really wish I wouldn't have been that slimy when I was doing my work, because what the stuff that I did was really incredibly harmful to just regular people. And this union buster guy, he's on his deathbed, he's going, his deathbed confession, here's all the stuff that I did while people were trying to organize. I would go to their houses, tell guys' wives, tell their families they were going to get fired if they continued to support the union, et cetera, on without saying. Our legal system is broken in terms of protecting workers' rights. It's dominated by corporations, lobbyists, etc. And a worker in an organizing campaign. So when you actually get the nerve up to form a union, or consider it, and you go talk to your coworkers about it, well, you're about 5 times as likely to get fired. You got a 1 in 5 chance of getting fired. 20% of those people who try to talk to their coworkers, not even actually get to the point of having an election, quote unquote. They're out the door because they're employed at will, and there's not a thing you can do about it. I mean, if that's not a violation of the First Amendment, I'm not sure what is, but that's the truth. All these guys, we've been following this for 9 months, right? This economic crisis, or a year. There's all these, these folks that, these CEOs of corporations making millions. The average CEO makes about, 400 times as much as the average worker of the company that they work for. Now, let's say you're the CEO of a bank. Bank employees get paid pretty well by and large. They're middle class folks, I guess. But imagine having 400 times that money. Now, they're not going to accept working without a contract. That protects them. And already, I don't know if you remember this, when they had the bailout, the stimulation money go out to the banks. they put in a restrictive clause that said, okay, you can't have these bonuses. And all of a sudden, these guys start suing their employers, as they have a right to do under their contract. And for me, I'm thinking, well, the tens and tens of hundreds of thousands of people that are out of work, just laid off, gone, no rights at all. They routinely deny workers the same opportunities on an uneven playing field from the first moment. And like I was saying, the will of majority is often crushed by their tactics. So what the FCA Employee Free Choice Act does, or tries to do, is to attempt to level the playing field. Now, there's a law that's in effect regarding labor unions today. It's called the National Labor Relations Act. It was written in the 30s to protect workers and to rebuild the middle class after the Great Depression. That has been whittled away over time to the point where the penalties for violating that act, in other words, if an employer violates the National Labor Relations Act against people who are organizing, the penalties are so few and minimal that employers have now, they come to consider them as just basically a cost of doing business. It's like, okay, we're going to pay this fine, but we're going to be able to treat these folks, we're going to be able to fire them, we're going to be able to violate the law, because it really has no lasting effect on us. It really doesn't matter. The Act guarantees that a majority of workers who want a union can have one, and allows them to form one by signing cards in authorization of that. In other words, if a 50% plus one, a simple majority of workers, employees in a company, in an organization, whatever, sign a card that authorizes union representation, they get that union. Secondly, it provides mediation arbitration for first contract disputes, a tactic that employers often use, even if the employees are successful in having an election and having union representation. The employer will stall around bargaining contract. The Act provides some protection so that when you get your first contract, you have some timelines in place. After a 3 or 6 month process, or some period of time, it'll go to arbitration. It establishes stronger penalties for violation of employees' rights when workers seek to form a union and during their first contract negotiations, like I talked about. It's got widespread support, contrary to what the opponents of this legislation, namely big business, big corporations, the right wing, because they just don't like unions. They think we're all communists or socialists. Can't have that. It's got very strong support, and in fact, 3/4 of the public, again, recent polling says that 3/4 of the public support it. I can tell you, I recently read an article by the chamber. It was written by the president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who said, our number one and number two priority is to defeat this bill. Now think about that. When you have, cool, 4th of July. When you have the number one and number two priorities, obviously you get the humor around that, of the body that represents all of business across America. They want to defeat this. That they consider it as pretty bad. Why do they consider it bad? Well, because they won't be able to get away with bloody murder against their employees anymore. That's pretty much the long and short of it. Hundreds and hundreds of well-established academics, religious representatives, business people. Roger Smith. Do you remember Roger and Me, done by Michael Moore? I think that was his first big movie. He's chasing around Roger Smith, the chair of General Motors. He works for an organization right now. I can't remember. He's the president or whatever. He supports the Employee Free Choice Act, and that's saying something, I suppose. As I said, these front groups, specifically U.S. Chamber of Commerce, other folks, the Club for Growth. I don't know if you've heard of those guys. They're a super right-wing body that. At any rate, they've mounted a massive campaign to block this, and you're going to start seeing ads on the internet. If you haven't already, ads and full-page ads on TV, in the papers. Although the Obama administration and Congress have not started considering this legislation actively, because my God, they're doing so much else already right now. But I suppose the plan is that they're going to try to get to vote on it this year. When that happens, you're going to be bombarded with ads that talk about, oh, why you shouldn't have a union, why unions are bad, you don't need a union, it's just going to get away. There's going to be a litany, and they're spending millions and millions of dollars. I had read recently they have $100 million plus war chest just for advertising, to go at the drop of a hat. Quote from Walmart's CEO. So a little story about Walmart and organizing. Now Canada, especially Quebec, if you've been there, you know that Quebec is a pretty liberal place. It's almost, dare I say, socialist. Walmart has a store in Montreal. The employees there decided they wanted to have a union. Now Canadians have a much greater opportunity to form a union. They don't have these, low penalties and, kind of anti-union establishment views. So they do. They form a union. You know what Walmart does the next day after they kind of declared, we've got a union now and we want to collectively bargain with you? They shuttered the store and moved out. They moved out of Germany. Walmart used to be in Germany. Germans have a very strong union culture. They decided they could not operate in that environment under that threat, under that, anti-business kind of thing. Well, Lee Scott, we like driving the car. This is he decided, and we're not going to give the steering wheel to anybody but us. So you kind of get the, the juice here of what's going on. It's lies and distortion. What's majority? Majority sign up is what I said. 50% plus one of employees. You sign up, you authorize a union, you got a union. It dates back to the passage of the Labor Relations Act, which I mentioned. And major employees today or employers use this because it's a peaceful and smart way to do business. So I'm going to close. What can you do about it? If you're motivated to be active around the subject or around this issue, and I think you should be. I think everybody who works for a living, that pretty much includes all of us, I think, needs to be aware of this, and it needs to be on your list of kind of things to be active about. So, contact your senator, contact your congressman, and tell them to support EFCA. Just tell them to support it. We have one senator that's going to support it. Sherrod Brown is definitely going to support it. Our current congressman in this district, Murray Joy Kilroy, is going to support it. Pat T. Berry, the other guy around Franklin County, is not. Let's call Pat T. Berry and tell him, we got if you live in this district. These folks really need to hear from you. It's the only way you can get, them to listen, and even then it's tough. But tell your friends, talk to the people your neighbors. If you hear somebody talking about this, and you hear these talking heads on television saying, they're going to take away your right to vote, right, by just signing these cards. Tell them that that's not correct. If 1/3 of the employees check off and say they still want an election, and there'll be a box to check off on the cards, they can still have an election if they want to do that. That's the law. We're not taking anybody's rights to a secret ballot away. We're making this easy. We're making it easier for workers to get what they need and what they want. And I just hope I've educated you a little bit, and get out there and be active. And Juanita, I'll just turn it over to you. Have I?
If they want, they can sign. Just to close up, we have some EFCA cards that we will send to your congressman if you want to sign up and send you a letter saying that you support the Employee Free Choice Act and American workers' rights to make their own decisions on their job.
Does anybody got any questions? It's like a workshop, so we can ask questions, or are you curious about anything? I don't have much more to say about it. I don't want to run it into the ground. What? Yeah, the question, here is, regarding locations of a chain is the example. So, for example, you use Papa John's. Hundreds and hundreds of locations of franchises, only a few workers at each one. yes, there could be a bargaining unit across the entire corporation, or there could be a bargaining unit in one store. Absolutely. There's no restriction on a low number. There's no lower limit. The common held belief is that, and in fact, as a union person, I'll tell you, unions even kind of, have stayed away from very small, bargaining units that would be considered a bargaining unit because, it's more difficult. It's a more difficult situation. But nevertheless, the act again provides a simpler and smoother way for this to be a non-confrontive situation. Look, just because you want to form a union and have some rights and collectively bargain with your employer does not mean you don't like your employer or you have an in for him. Of course you don't. You like your job. You want to keep your job. That's fine. The setup that corporations have done for so long is that they've treated a union coming in as this hostile thing. Well, this is not an external entity. A union is simply a representative body of the people that work there. They're the union, that's it. It's not somewhere in Washington. It's not somewhere in Columbus. It's right there. And the way they spin this is that, it's this external thing, this monster that's going to come in and destroy our relationships, between workers and employees.
I would just add, really quickly, that for a really long time in America, unions didn't know how to organize the service industry. And as many of you guys know, SEIU has four divisions in it. One of them is the property service division, which a majority, if not all of our workers, work for private corporations, and they clean huge commercial buildings, schools, and stuff. And our shops are tiny, but what we do is we organize by market. So for example, a Papa John's, if they wanted to organize and we found it was a franchise, we would go after that franchise and organize it by the market. And so I think unions have generally gotten better in understanding the post-industrialization of America. And so the service industry, like you said, the janitors, 2 years ago we're making $6.85 an hour. They now make $8.45 and will have access to affordable health care in January. It took them 4 years to fight for that, but under the Employee Free Choice Act, what it would take was a majority sign-up. Because again, as my brother said, how the laws are written, the boss actually gets to mandate and dictate how people recognize you as an employee, but also on top of that, how people recognize you and your coworkers as a voice. And so what the Employee Free Choice Act does is it goes back to the heart of the National Labor Relations Act and corrects that balance of power. Of course, Lee Scott doesn't want a union. He doesn't want to pay more than a penny per unit in China. And that's why these guys are investing so much time and money, because the American working people at the end of the day scare the crap out of them. And also, unions are getting smarter and learning how to really go out and organize and create standards in industry. Be that a Kroger's, or be that a Papa John's, or be that a janitor who works at OSU, or a janitor that cleans the AEP building. And we're getting smarter, we're getting tougher, and we're no longer sitting back waiting for them to do our jobs.
Anybody else curious about anything we haven't talked about? Great. No? Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for coming out and sticking around, and enjoy your day.